Welcome to the Dogtor Bros, where we have an honest discussion around vet life in and out of the clinic. My name is Chris, and I'm your doc of the day and your guide to this episode. I'm a veterinarian in North Carolina, and I'm here with my closest friends from vet school.
Hey, this is Adam. I'm a relief veterinarian in Louisville, Kentucky.
Hey, this is Jeff. I'm a dermatology associate veterinarian, also in Louisville, Kentucky.
And this is Chris again, and today we're welcoming a special guest, Dr. Tyler Pelfrey. Dr. Pelfrey is a class of 2015 Ross graduate. Following his graduation, he went straight into GP in Tampa, Florida, where he was also moonlighting at a local emergency clinic. After a year of practice, he then moved to Idaho, where he also was practicing as a GP. And then during his time in Idaho, he came across the Emerge E program through Bluepearl, where he was trained in emergency medicine. That training led him to Louisville, Kentucky, where he was a senior emergency clinician for approximately 3 years. He then moved back to Florida into a position as a GP-ER hybrid hospital as a daytime emergency doc. After a period of burnout, Dr. Pelfrey then accepted a GP position back in Louisville, Kentucky, where he worked for 2 years prior to opening his Louisville Veterinary Urgent Care clinic. Outside of the practice, he enjoys Dude's Day with his son, time with his wife, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and his flight simulator. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, as everyone knows, typically how we start these episodes is we have a little game to play or kind of a question to ask everybody. So my question for everyone is, what is your favorite video game and why?
I mean, right now mine is Microsoft Flight Simulator. Hit that up all the time.
What is a Microsoft Flight Simulator?
You essentially just fly airplanes, but I have like a whole cockpit set up in my basement. So it's pretty sweet.
That's awesome. I've seen videos of that and it looks intense.
Yeah, it's like the real thing.
It's like the real thing. I would be honored if you would fly my next flight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have your pilot's license?
I almost have a pilot's license. I stopped training before vet school, but I never finished it.
Oh, gotcha. My first vet that I worked for, he was a pilot or got his pilot's license while he was a veterinarian, and he had a flight simulator. And I remember going to his house. I was friends with his son, and he was always just playing his flight simulator all the time. And he had a little cockpit set up and everything as well.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's I guess it's a weird thing, but it's fun.
I mean, that sounds legit. This is Jeff. My current favorite video game, maybe for a long time, is Super Smash Brothers Brawl, which I just bought for my Switch, even though it came out 5 years ago. But that's okay. I'm still having a great time. I clearly don't game very much.
This is Adam. A good single player game. So I like a good open world RPG type game. The Witcher 3 is pretty legit. It's a pretty fun game. But also going back to vet school days, I mean, Mario Kart. It's hard to beat Mario Kart. It's a classic.
N64 version.
N64 Mario Kart, yeah. So going old school with the Mario Kart answer as well.
That was going to be my answer, was definitely Mario Kart. Now that my kids can start playing me in a Mario Kart, it's fun to play that now as well. So Mario Kart now is my favorite game. Going into this episode, this is kind of an age-old question we always ask everyone. Tyler, what kind of got you into vet med and kind of your process for that?
I mean, right after high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. The first major that I picked was diesel mechanic. So I was in technical school to be a diesel mechanic and found out that wasn't the life for me. So I just started taking random classes and took human anatomy and physiology. And I was kind of into the science part of that. I also had a goat herd at home. So I kind of followed that and got a volunteer position at a local vet clinic and just kind of took off from there.
Awesome. And then I know you graduated from Ross. So how was that like? How did you get into Ross and what was your whole process?
So being from Kentucky, I mean, if most people from Kentucky go to Auburn or Tuskegee, I believe they do in-state tuition for Kentucky residents as well. But I would have to finish my degree to get that and take a few more classes. And I was kind of already delayed in deciding what I wanted to do. So I looked at Ross and saw that you didn't have to take like Organic Chem 2 to get into Ross, which I had all of my prereqs done for Ross. So I applied when I was in my junior year of undergrad and got accepted, and figured it would be nice to spend a few years on the beach.
No, that's awesome. And you were very lucky for not having to take organic chemistry too.
Yeah.
Even though one was, I think, harder, but definitely that's super lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what were the pros and cons of going to Ross?
I'm the pros. You're on a beach for 3 years, a little over, 3 years, and then just getting out of scenery that you've seen before. I've spent my whole life in the South and grew up in Kentucky, would vacation in Alabama and Florida, and it's kind of a change for me. And also at that point, I hate to say it, but Ross was less competitive to get into. And I got accepted. I didn't have to waste any more time taking more classes to try to get into an in-state school. So it was really just me being young and not thinking finances through and all that. But I'm not upset with my decision.
No, that's awesome. You also saved a year of tuition, I guess, too, if you had to go, I guess, for a senior year. So might have saved a little bit of money there.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of open this up now to like the roundtable segment of this, and just kind of everyone just kind of rapid fire you with questions. So what would you say was the most challenging part of attending Ross?
The culture change for me was a big deal. I'd never been out of the country until I got on the flight to move to St. Kitts. So that was probably the biggest thing. And also just like the sped up curriculum. So you're there 12 months out of the year. I think you have 6 weeks off throughout the whole year. So it was a challenge.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So when are those 6 weeks? Is it like for holidays, or when do you actually get that time off, roughly?
So you go from like January to May, I believe, or April. You get 2 weeks off, then you start the summer trimester, then you get 2 weeks off, and then you go until I think it's like a week before Christmas, and you get 3 weeks off at that point for Christmas and New Year's.
So is it a 3-year program then?
It is. So I think it's 2 years, 8 months is what it comes out to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then your clinical year. So it makes it 3 years, 8 months.
Yeah, that's an interesting setup. I guess for the listeners who've probably heard a little bit about our curriculum before over at Tuskegee, it's kind of like the standard. We're in for 4 years. I guess one difference from some other schools is like halfway. Well, our 3rd year is kind of like a half and half class and clinics, and then all of 4th year is clinics. So I knew that Ross was like a little bit different. Remind me, I guess, like when I know people take NAVLE sometimes like at a different time. Or I remember like I did an externship at LSU, and some students from Ross came and were like in my same rotation, but they had already taken the NAVLE and passed when I was like, I guess it was the spring of 3rd year. But they were technically the same year as me, but they were kind of done. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people will take the NAVLE pretty much as soon as they start clinics, or I think some even before. I was in a weird situation. So I finished my time at Ross or in St. Kitts in December of 2013. So I started clinics January 2014. So I started when the class at University of Tennessee had already taken their NAVLE and were getting their scores. So I was new to like the whole clinical scene. And I was delayed in taking my NAVLE. I didn't take it until I completed my clinical year. So I started practice a little bit later, but it's kind of, there's no requirement by Ross for when you have to take the NAVLE.
So what was your delay? Was it personal stuff, which you certainly don't have to get into, but what was your difference?
I'm a notoriously horrible studier and like task manager. When I was in clinics, if I had free time, I wasn't studying. I was like going out mountain biking or something like that. So it wasn't until I finished clinics that I decided, hey, I'm going to sit down and study now. So instead of being in the clinic, I would study and then go do what I wanted to do.
Fair enough.
So when I was in undergrad, I remember, like you said, a lot of people from Kentucky go to Auburn or Tuskegee. I don't remember hearing a lot about the island schools until I was actually in vet school. So where did you hear about the opportunities?
So I did undergrad at Morehead State in Kentucky, and we had a pre-vet club there, and they had an ambassador from Ross come and give us a little talk. And that's where I initially learned about it.
I think that's cool. And one comment I wanted to make from something you said earlier, which I think is important, is you mentioned like you had done all your prereqs before Ross. So like that was an important part of like what was, I guess, a low barrier to get in versus like taking OChem 2, which I definitely had to take. I remember when I was applying to vet school that I could only go based on some of the classes that I had taken. Just like I hadn't taken like stats, so that cut off a few schools. And I literally called some schools and checked their websites. And I was like, oh, I haven't taken certain things, or I have to retake certain things and get my quote unquote science GPA up because it was low for some schools and then it was fine for some schools. So that's, I think, an important thing if you're like a student out there listening is those prereqs are different for every school you apply to. And I ended up very strategically applying to A, what I could afford, and then B, what schools would take my classes, because some like wouldn't take my GRE score was too low for some, but it was fine for other ones. And so I think that really was important. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah. And I think that like the other barrier for people is it's all in their head. So if they know that their GPA isn't the best, it seems like they hold out from applying. Whereas I knew my GPA wasn't the best, but I had a ton of clinical experience working as a vet assistant before. And I believe that really helped me in my interview. Just like the confidence of knowing how to act in a clinic or what I need to do. And that was my strong point. So if you have strong points, definitely hit on those in your interview or your application.
This is Chris. Yeah, I could not agree more with that as well, because I also had a lot of vet tech assistant or veterinary assistant experience prior to vet school. I think that kind of helped out as well. And yeah, basically it's like we had some classmates I remember in my undergrad that went and applied, and they went to other schools like NC State or other schools because they had other prereqs done. They didn't graduate from undergrad, but they're in vet schools and they're now practicing vets and doing great. So I guess more to the audience is you don't have to go to the traditional, get your 4-year degree and become a veterinarian, which is pretty cool. Other question for Ross, did you have to travel anywhere for your interview, or did you do like a Zoom interview?
I traveled to Columbus, Ohio. I think Ross was owned by another company who had a campus there. So I just traveled to Ohio to interview.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So going to your first year at Ross, what was the adjustment like there? Did you have anything where you're just like, oh shoot, did I make the wrong decision and going here? Or were you just like, this is awesome, let's keep it going?
I mean, both. It was living there was awesome, but the curriculum was like, I was like neck deep because I'm horrible at studying. I studied when I had to in undergrad, and being in a situation where you have to study most days to stay on top of everything was definitely different for me. But for someone who is horrible at studying, I made it through decently. So, I mean, it's possible for even people like me.
It's possible. This is Jeff again. And kind of on that same, Ross thread, since we're learning a lot about, this school that none of us or the rest of us didn't go to. You mentioned like, sometimes when you're not studying, you do other stuff on the island. And that was a little bit of a culture shock, definitely from the school part. So I think we commiserate on the vet school part, like drinking from a fire hose, learning. But did you feel like it was common for a lot of students to like go to the beach or go hang out or go do other things? Or did some of you guys use that as motivation to study? Like, I'm going to study and then go to the beach. What was like the common, I guess, what was common for students in your class or the Ross students in general? Like what is the culture around like seeing nature versus studying? Is it really distracting, or what is that like?
I mean, it's definitely distracting, and I think it's the same at Ross as it is at any other school. You have the people who probably never see the sun and just study all the time, and then you have people who are like probably see the sun too much. So I feel like I was able to kind of find a good flow for me. So yeah, I did go to the beach a lot, and most days, like we had puppy play date on the beach where our dogs would play, so my toes hit the sand most days. But like Monday through Thursday, you'd study every day after class. Friday was beach volleyball, and then party or whatever you wanted to do. Saturday, another beach day, start studying again on Sunday. Yeah, I mean, at the beach, volleyball, even they had a volcano there you could hike. So a lot of good outdoorsy stuff.
That sounds sweet.
That's fantastic. Oh my God.
I'm super jealous about that.
Alabama was not like that.
we played beach volleyball. It just wasn't a pretty scenery to play it at.
Yeah, I mean, we would play beach volleyball, and you would see, what is it, like the green flare or whatever when the sun goes down.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could see that every night on the beach. So that's pretty sweet.
That's crazy. I know you said that you had a lot of experience and you felt like that helped give you a leg up when you were applying into vet school. I noticed when I was doing my interviews, you could almost get a sense of, in the applications and the interviews, you could almost get a sense of what schools put what weight on in terms of grades versus extracurriculars versus work experience. For pre-vet students now who are looking at Ross as an option, did you feel like there was a specific area that they put more focus in when they were reviewing potential applicants?
Yeah, I really think that they put more, I don't want to say more weight. They took into account your clinical experience quite a bit, because from your first semester, you're interacting with animals, which I'm not sure about any other schools, but like your first class, you're tasked with walking the shelter dogs that are housed on campus and caring for them. And I feel like Ross, and it's something that a lot of Ross students pride themselves on, is being more comfortable clinically going into a clinical year than a lot of students at like traditional schools. Because like our third year, we're working in the clinic on campus. They assign you sheep and donkeys that you have to go soap every day and, treat medically. And, I feel like that they tend, at least when I was there, they tended to weigh more on making you more clinically ready than other schools.
I worked with a Ross graduate as well, and she kind of had the same answer with that about being ready for clinics and everything as well. So kind of I guess topic for Ross, if someone was trying to learn more about Ross, what was like living there like your housing situation? Did you have a car?
Yeah, so the housing situation, I'm not sure if it's changed, but your first semester, you had the option to live on campus. So they had dorms that were a quarter-mile walk from the campus where you went to class. After that, you would move off campus. There are private residences right across the street from the school, and essentially students lived all over the island. So I lived, it was a place called Frigate Bay. So I was probably about a 200-yard walk from the beach, kind of like where everyone goes to, when they're not studying to have fun. So, and I did have a car. I bought it was a Nissan Sunny. I think it's the equivalent of a Nissan Altima here. I bought it for $4,000 cash, and it was not running by the time I left. My windows got broken out. Someone stole my radio out of the center. So I couldn't roll my windows down. So I had to break them out so I could get some fresh air. Yeah.
I heard that was quite normal for that to happen.
Yeah. Thieves were pretty common, but I definitely felt safe there. Like I never felt like I was in danger or anything.
No, that's good, and I'm glad everything. That's the feeling that you want, though, is to be safe in vet school.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of going also with your after you're moving there, living there, doing your clinical year. What was that process like? Was Tennessee your first choice to do your clinical year there, or was it kind of just draw from a hat and that's where you got chosen for?
Yeah, it was my first choice. So when you were going into clinical year, you'd write down your 3 options of where you'd like to go. From what I understand, the Ross would present you to one of those schools. That school could either accept or deny you. If they denied you, then Ross put you wherever else that they saw fit or wherever they needed to fill seats at. But luckily, Tennessee was my first choice, and they took me in.
And then did you have any challenges when you went to Tennessee as far as like integrating with the the class, basically a new class for you? Like, how was that environment? How was it getting into those classes and clinics with people who already kind of know each other? Like, was that difficult?
Yeah, that was the most difficult part. I mean, I'm an introvert anyway. So going into a new school with a class that had been together, for 4 years essentially, and they had already been on clinics for 8 months before I started.
Mm-hmm.
So jumping into that and learning the flow was the most challenging thing. But and also 3 months after I met those people and started to make friends, a new class comes in. So I had to do it all over again. But I mean, it all worked out, and I loved my time at Tennessee. It was great.
That's great. I feel like that could be a big challenge. I felt it a little bit just from externships when I kind of jump in. I think I've mentioned in a really early episode, like I spent a little time at LSU, a little time at Auburn, and you definitely have to like make quick friends and feel out of place. But that's not for the faint of heart. I feel like I felt like a fish out of water, and I was just like, oh, there's all these. Everybody has jokes and is already friends. I miss my friends.
Yeah.
And then another good question I think for us to ask is if there's anybody listening out there who has interest in Ross or maybe doesn't even know it's an option, what would be some pro tips or anything you would have for them as far as looking into Ross to apply?
I mean, their website's definitely useful. I'm a YouTube addict, so I would always YouTube Life in St. Kitts on YouTube, and that would pop up, and you would see videos of students at Ross, videos of people coming there on a cruise ship or vacation. It just gives you kind of a good idea. And I'm sure there are tons of Facebook groups. Actually, I think I joined a Facebook group for incoming students or something like that. That was pretty beneficial.
Do they have like any type of intro program once you get there kind of thing? I know we talked about in one of our episodes how like we had a couple day experience where we got to meet everybody and do everything together before we started school. Does Ross do anything like that?
Yeah, so for your first semester, you go down a week before classes start, and you have your orientation week. And they put you into groups of like 8 or 10 people, and they drive you around the island. They help you get your bank account set up, show you where the grocery stores are. You meet all the other students, and they have like little get-togethers for you. And so yeah, they show you around at least before they throw you to the sharks at school.
No, that's good. Well, awesome. Well, thanks you again for coming onto our podcast here. So kind of ending off the episode, is there anything that you think we missed or should have asked you about Ross? Or
oh man, my advice would be if you want to get out and experience something new, Ross or any island school is going to be that big change. I mean, I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, never lived outside of Eastern Kentucky until Ross. So experiencing a different culture, meeting people from places that weren't Kentucky was great for me. I think it made me a better person by 1,000,000%. And I mean, don't be scared to do it. It's I dream every day of going back to vet school and just living in St. Kitts. So
wow,
it's definitely worth it. Yeah, me and Teresa, we went there on our honeymoon. I went back down last year for a job interview. I tried to move back from St. Kitts. So it was great.
And I was just going to mention for those who are listening, I believe your wife, Dr. Teresa Coe's episode is going to come out before this one. So definitely go listen to that one when it comes out. But we got both of them.
Well, awesome. So kind of the end off this game with kind of an easier or podcast, an easier question is, if you could live in a country outside of the U.S., where would you be? And I think we already know Tyler's answer is probably St. Kitts.
Maybe St. Kitts. The other option is Iceland. Iceland's pretty sweet.
Oh.
I always tell Teresa I would like to move there, and she's like, it's cold and it's dark.
It's like complete opposite of St. Kitts.
Wait, so why Iceland then?
We went there on vacation years ago, and I don't know. I like the vibe of it, sitting around and hot pools or whatever it is. And I don't know. It was just a cool experience. Maybe I could turn into I don't know, like a Viking or something if I moved up
there. This is Jeff. And I would say right now, the place that I would think off the top of my head would probably be Costa Rica, because I've been twice and I loved it so much, and the nature's outstanding. And if not there, I'd probably be in Mexico.
Good choice.
I love it. I love the culture. I love the people. Every time I've been there, it's been absolutely incredible.
This is Adam. I have always said that I've wanted to go to Ireland. I think the landscapes are just beautiful. I love all the castles that they have around. I'm part Irish, so I think I'd fit in okay. So yeah, I can drink a Guinness. I'm down.
I can drink a Guinness.
Can you split the G?
So I'm gonna go with Ireland.
Good answers. This is Chris. I guess my answer now, I've never been there, but I've always wanted to go there and dream of going there, is New Zealand. That would be my first choice. I always joke about it with my wife, even joked out of vet school of just moving straight there and seeing about getting a vet job out there. Plans obviously changed, and I'm happy where I'm at. But yeah, New Zealand would be the spot. So thanks again, Dr. Pelfrey, for being on our episode. Is there anywhere where people can find you?
You can find me at LouisvilleVetUrgentCare.com. Instagram is Louisville Veterinary Urgent Care. That's the two big places.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Dogtor Bros. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere where you listen to podcasts. It would also help us out if you could share this episode with others who may be interested in today's topic. You can also tell us what you want to hear. You can drop suggestions in the comments or shoot us an email at thedoctorbros@gmail.com or DM us at Dogtor Bros on Instagram. And this is Chris, and you can find me on Instagram at dr.chrishernandez.
And this is Adam. You can find me on Instagram at DrAdamDVM. That's DRADAMDVM.
And this is Jeff. You can find me on TikTok or Instagram at DermDrJeff, DermDogtorJeff.